Good morning. It's Thursday, November 6th. I'm Phil Streible, Chief Market Strategist at Blue Line Futures. So, looking at the precious metals action overnight here, because we do have a lot of green on the screen in that particular sector. You got gold up about $28 here, sitting at 40.20. The high of the overnight session was 40.26, and the low was 39.73. So, it's under just about 1% move higher here. It is off about 8% from its 52-week high at 43.36, seen on Monday, October 20th. Now, gold's volatility, which has picked up here recently, is continuing to move lower, back getting close to that 20 level. The key areas of support on the gold market are 39.17 and 39.01. Your areas of resistance are 40.81 and also 4100. Something traders will want to note and put on their trading screens here is the average true range. And the 14-day average true range indicates that gold's moving about $100 a day. So if you do have one of those 10-ounce contracts, you would expect to see about $1,000 worth of volatility on a day-to-day basis here. Looking at the silver market, that is also pushing up higher, just about 1% here on the overnight session, sitting at 48.47. So the high of the overnight session, 48.61. The low of the overnight session here, 47.61. So we're getting about $1 range here. And silver is snapping a 3-day losing streak. It's off about 9.5% from its 52-week high at 53.03. That was seen on October 16th when we saw that physical squeeze go down here over in London. The key areas of support are 45.73, and your key area of resistance is 49.72. I anticipate a move and a break above that to re-threaten that $50 mark and really start to track the ETF flows coming back in the market. Now you look at a 14-day average true range, quite a wild ride here, about $1.76 as far as volatility, and that volatility has really come down recently. Now looking at the CME's Fed Watch tool for that December 9th, 10th meeting here, we did see another adjustment here after we finally got some economic data, with markets now seeing about a 67.3% probability that the Federal Reserve will cut rates 25 basis points at that December meeting. That is down from about 72.8% a week ago. Now you shift to the equity markets, we do have a mixed picture here overnight after that stellar rally yesterday. You have the S&P, the NASDAQ, the Russell, and the Dow all just slightly mixed here, with some of the indices in the positive territory and others in the negative. Traders are really weighing in on the implications of this U.S. Supreme Court, hinting that it's ready to put some significant limits here on Trump's tariff agenda. Now, the U.S. layoffs, those also remain in focus here, with October seeing the most job cuts here in more than 2 decades. So we did get the ADP private sector payroll data, and the U.S. added 42,000 jobs of private payrolls last month. That's according to the ADP National Employment Report that was released yesterday morning here. And the number did exceed the expectations here. They were expecting an increase of about 37,500 jobs in October. So it was a significant change from the previous month, where we saw a negative print here of 29,000 jobs reported lost in September. However, last month's hiring momentum was not particularly robust or widespread by any means here. Now, we are going to have several central bankers, actually 6 of them altogether, come out. What's most important is that 4 of them are actually voting members here. So we'll really want to pay attention to those. So you do get some data that comes out. You do get your shifts in the CME's Fed Watch tool, but really it's been some of the language that recently has mostly affected these particular markets. Now, the dollar index, it is easing overnight after reaching a 5-month high against a basket of currencies. So the dollar is down 26 at 99.79, and I suspect that much of that is what's providing that boost here to the precious metals markets. Now, at the same time, we do have the Bank of England, and it's as of this recording, they are going to start to release what their expectations are and also make an interest rate decision here. And they are likely to keep interest rates unchanged at 4% in a closely contested decision. So that comes out at 6 a.m. Central Time. Now, the dollar index is bullish against the euro, the yen, the pound, the Canadian dollar, and that represents most of the basket components of the US dollar index. Remember, it is a weighted index against 6 different currencies, with 57.6% the euro currency, 13.6% the Japanese yen, the pound 11.9%, the Canadian Canadian dollar 9.1, Swedish krona 4.2, and Swiss franc 3.6. So if you're trading the dollar index, you do want to pay attention to some of these currencies here and some of the big movements that we tend to see. Now, looking at 10-year Treasury yields, they are declining after yesterday's massive surge with a last of 4.14%. The November VIX futures are just slightly higher, up 2 ticks here at 1894. It tries to get over that 20 level, and when you see it can pop over 20, that's when you really get that increased volatility. And anytime you start to see volatility pick up in the U.S. equity markets, you want to shift. You want to take a look at things like the dollar, look at the gold market, look at Treasury yields, and then also look at that volatility index, because once the volatility picks up, then what you want to do is widen out some of your parameters, take down some of your position sizing here, and be a little bit more patient with your trading here back and forth, as you should see better opportunities near support and resistance level. Now, speaking of volatility, we are still seeing some volatility here in the crypto space here, with Bitcoin, Ethereum, also XRP and Solana all just slightly lower in the pre-market session here, with Ethereum down about 1.3%, Bitcoin down about 0.5%, and that's really those dip buyers coming in below that 100,000 mark, pushing it out and up to about 104,590 overnight. You go to Europe and Asia, European stocks, they fell as they're continuing to focus on some of the earnings that are coming out. And then Asian stocks, they climbed the most in over a week as the dip buyers really lifted technology, kind of mirroring what we saw yesterday in the US market, snapping a 2-day sell-off here. And the MSCI Asia Pacific Index rose 1.2%, and it was its biggest advance here since October 27th. Now, on the earnings front, out of the 413 S&P 500 companies that have reported earnings so far, 82% have managed to beat analyst forecasts, with 14 just missing here. Excuse me. You look at the precious metals and the ETF flows, because the thing about flows is that all this money is inside of a vacuum here, and there's 27 major commodities. There's only so many stocks out there. There's only so many ETFs. When you get into a futures trading account, or when you get into your particular trading account here, for the retail side, money has to go somewhere. Will it go into money market funds? Does it get sidelined? Does it get parked in cryptocurrencies, metals, and things like that? Recently, we've seen some outflows take place here, and the total gold held by ETFs, they rose 16% year to date here at 97 million ounces, but this is the lowest level that we've seen since September 30th. So where is that money going? Is perhaps some of that money coming out of the gold market here, waiting patiently and perhaps rotating in the U.S. equities here on the possibility of a Trump reversal of the tariff that he's put in place here from the Supreme Court? You know, it's just a question out there. Not really looking for an answer, just more of an observation to take place here and watch some of these flows take place in the dynamics in the markets. So you look at the exchange traded funds, they cut about 24,000 troy ounces of gold. Nothing significant, nothing to really move the needle here, because gold is up 52% year to date. You look at silver, it is up 14% year to date as far as ETF holdings are concerned. And something that I am also monitoring here is platinum and palladium, because those ETF flows have continued to flow out, with platinum for the 6th straight day, palladium for the 5th straight day, and then finally the gold silver ratio sitting at about 82 to 1. So if you have any questions on futures or option trading, I love to talk to you, love to hear from you, love to get an account open over here working with us over at Blue Line Futures. We put out a lot of great content here, whether it's on the agricultural markets, the livestock futures have just been plummeting here. It just took my wife buying some Australian beef, throwing that in the fridge, and it sparked liquidation across the board. You look at the agricultural markets, a lot of flows back and forth, a lot of action, and it's great to see some price action, whether to the upside or downside in some of these agricultural markets, because they've been heavily muted for quite a while here. So remember that futures and option trading, it does involve risk of loss. It may not be suitable to all investors. Good luck, good trading, go get them.